Immediately after winning the U.S. general election, Donald Trump announced he would impose 100% tariffs on all goods originating from BRICS nations if they continued their de-dollarization agenda. This declaration sent shockwaves through the global economic landscape, particularly to major BRICS players like China and India. However, unlike smaller nations that might have scrambled to appease the United States, the BRICS alliance demonstrated resilience and a calculated defiance. When Trump previously imposed a mere 25% tariff on Canadian goods, Canada's economy felt the strain. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau rushed to negotiate a better deal, highlighting the disproportionate power dynamics at play. But when it comes to BRICS, a bloc comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now Indonesia, the dynamics are entirely different. These nations are not inclined to bow to U.S. pressure, nor are they strangers to economic headwinds. BRICS leaders remain committed to their de-dollarization agenda, signaling their readiness to forge a new path independent of the U.S. dollar's dominance. Trump's tariff threat and the BRICS counteraction. Donald Trump's rise to power came with an unyielding promise to secure and uphold the supremacy of the U.S. dollar. His administration viewed tariffs as a coercive tool to dissuade nations from challenging this dominance. Yet, in targeting the BRICS nations, Trump underestimated the shifting global power dynamics. While the U.S. economy remains substantial, the combined economic influence of BRICS has grown exponentially, with their share of the global economy steadily rising. The inclusion of Indonesia into the BRICS bloc further exemplifies this trend. As Southeast Asia's largest economy and a major player in global trade, Indonesia brings strategic significance and added weight to BRICS's collective efforts to challenge dollar hegemony. With Indonesia's support, the BRICS alliance now represents a more diversified and formidable economic coalition, one that is increasingly difficult for the U.S. to isolate or intimidate. De-dollarization, the catalyst for change. The de-dollarization agenda, which seeks to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar in international trade, has been gaining traction for years. For BRICS nations, the risks of overdependence on the dollar are clear. Sanctions, economic leverage, and the weaponization of the dollar have highlighted the vulnerabilities of a dollar-centric system. Trump's tariff threats only reinforce these concerns, galvanizing the BRICS bloc to accelerate their efforts toward financial independence. Following Trump's election in 2016, the dollar surged in value, strengthening against the Chinese yuan, Russian ruble, Brazilian real, Indian rupee, and South African rand. While this was celebrated by U.S. policymakers, it imposed a significant burden on emerging economies. Higher trade costs and inflationary pressures in these nations created a direct incentive to seek alternatives to the dollar. BRICS unified defiance. Rather than succumbing to U.S. pressure, BRICS nations have doubled down on their de-dollarization agenda. Russia, for example, has spearheaded efforts to conduct trade in local currencies. Over 80% of its trade with Kazakhstan is now settled in rubles or tenge, and similar arrangements are being expanded to other nations in the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been a vocal advocate for trade in local currencies, questioning the historic supremacy of the dollar and emphasizing the need for alternatives. China has aggressively promoted the yuan in bilateral trade agreements across Africa and Asia, effectively bypassing the dollar. Indonesia's entry into BRICS is expected to amplify these efforts. As a key player in ASEAN and a nation with deep trade ties across Asia and the Middle East, Indonesia adds new dimensions to the BRICS strategy. Its participation not only strengthens the bloc's economic clout, but also enhances its geopolitical influence in regions historically dominated by Western financial systems. A coordinated global effort beyond individual nations, the BRICS alliance has demonstrated an ability to coordinate with like-minded countries outside the bloc. Allied nations wary of the dollar's vulnerabilities have quietly adopted covert de-dollarization strategies. While some countries may avoid openly challenging the U.S., their alignment with BRICS' broader goals is undeniable. The shift away from the dollar is not an overnight mission, but a gradual and calculated transformation. Analysts predict that as BRICS nations and their allies continue to build frameworks for trade in local currencies, the global financial landscape will inevitably adapt. The transition away from the US dollar won't happen overnight, nor will all countries immediately abandon it in favor of trading in local currencies. Rather, it is a gradual process, much like the way the dollar itself became the dominant international currency. In this regard, BRICS has already achieved significant progress in its mission. Not only is the alliance advancing its de-dollarization agenda, but it is also inspiring other nations to join the movement. Countries like Turkey and Malaysia have expressed interest in joining BRICS, attracted by its vision of a multipolar financial system that is less vulnerable to U.S. interference. For these nations, the prospect of making their economies more resilient to sanctions and dollar dependency is a powerful incentive. However, the secret goal of full de-dollarization is unlikely to be openly proclaimed to avoid triggering retaliatory measures, such as sanctions or tariffs, from the United States. Trump's tariff threats, a catalyst for de-dollarization. The key question remains: will Donald Trump's threat of 100% tariffs deter BRICS nations from continuing their de-dollarization agenda? Evidence suggests that such threats may actually backfire. Instead of halting de-dollarization, they are likely to accelerate it, even encouraging countries previously loyal to the Western financial system to rethink their dependency on the dollar. Critics of Trump's approach argue that his threats are hollow and counterproductive. Imposing 100% tariffs on BRICS nations would not weaken their economies, but would instead harm American consumers. Higher import costs would inevitably be passed on to consumers, fueling inflation and undermining U.S. economic stability. Far from deterring BRICS, such actions risk pushing trade partners closer to the alliance, strengthening their resolve to bypass the dollar. The fragility of dollar hegemony. The dominance of the dollar has long provided the U.S. with unique advantages, such as cheaper borrowing costs and enhanced geopolitical influence. However, maintaining this dominance comes at a cost: the need for continuous trade deficits to sustain global dollar liquidity. Trump's strategy of imposing tariffs creates a dangerous. By restricting dollar circulation in global trade, the very system underpinning the dollar's reserve currency status is undermined. BRICS nations are capitalizing on this vulnerability. For years, they've been preparing for a dollar-independent financial system. This includes mechanisms for trade in local currencies, accumulating gold reserves, and establishing alternative payment systems. Examples include Russia's SPFS system, bypassing SWIFT, and China's push for yuan-based trade across Asia and Africa. These efforts reduce BRICS' exposure to U.S. financial leverage and build a framework for a multipolar financial system. The unintended consequences of Trump's tariff threats extend beyond BRICS. Countries and companies affected by U.S. tariffs are restructuring supply chains, shifting production to regions like Southeast Asia and Mexico. This weakens the dollar's centrality in international commerce as regional currencies gain traction. Paradoxically, Trump's policies could strengthen the dollar short-term as a safe haven. But an overvalued dollar becomes unaffordable for global transactions, incentivizing alternatives. This highlights the Triffin dilemma: the tension between domestic economic goals and global demand for a reserve currency. By restricting global access to dollars through tariffs, Trump risks undermining the liquidity needed to sustain its reserve status. While Trump's rhetoric aims to project strength, it underscores the fragility of a system dependent on global confidence in U.S. financial stability. BRICS nations and others are advancing initiatives to reduce dollar reliance. This includes bolstering regional trade, expanding local currency use, and creating resilient financial systems. Countries like Turkey and Iran are watching closely. If they join BRICS, the alliance's economic clout will further erode the dollar's dominance. Indonesia's entry has already added momentum, showcasing the appeal of a multipolar system less vulnerable to sanctions and coercion. Trump's efforts to defend the dollar through tariffs and sanctions may hasten its decline. BRICS and other emerging economies, united by grievances against U.S. economic hegemony, are advancing alternatives to reduce dollar dependence. Trump may inadvertently become the greatest catalyst for the dollar's decline. Will Trump escalate his threats and start a trade war? Or are his tariff threats simply rhetoric? How will China and other BRICS nations respond if such tariffs are imposed? If you're interested in global power dynamics and the rise of BRICS, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest videos covering African politics, the global economy, and the shifting geopolitical landscape. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more insights.